And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is David McLeod, your life mastery coach and senior partner at the Wellness Universe. I want to just say thank you for being here today or for watching the recording, whatever it is you're doing. Today, we are embarking on episode number 60. Hard to believe we have done 59 previous episodes, and we decided to do what we call an empowerment review. Now, this is mostly for 2024, but I think we can look at review in a greater sense, like not just for this year, but also for our lives and whatever else might be going on. So that's the topic for today. And I'm going to ask my co-hosts to introduce themselves. And today, Scott, I'm going to start with you.
Well, thank you very much, David. Hi, I'm Scott Holmes. I'm from Boston. I'm an intuitive Reiki master. However, intuition comes into all the work we do. I work with professional men and women to help them find their path, to find themselves, and enjoy it thoroughly. And I hope everyone watching will enjoy this particular show because it will reveal so much of each of our panelists.
Yes. And I also understand, Scott, that a major life change event happened for you yesterday. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yes, so I got married yesterday.
Woo! Congratulations, brother.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. My girlfriend of 6+ years. We have been together for quite a while, and it was very natural progression for us. I'm soon to retire from full-time work to be able to do what my full-time passion is, and that is this work.
Right. That's awesome, dude. Congratulations. And I know it marks the start of something really, really amazing for you. And I'm just really delighted for you, my friend.
Thank you.
And next up, Gail, I'd like to go to you now. Would you please introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and why.
Thank you, David. Congratulations, Scott. I did not know that you had such a special occasion this month. Hello, everyone. I'm Gail Nowak. I'm also located in the greater Boston area. I help spirit-led wellness coaches and leaders in the wellness space create authentic, healthy business relationships without hiding or silencing yourself. I'm all about communicating boldly, leading lovingly, making the world a better place. And I use an energy first, healing centered approach to help my clients go from hiding in plain sight to becoming a bold and gentle leader in this new earth paradigm that is continuing to unfold during these very interesting times. And David, you mentioned why do I care about this so much? I'll make it really short and sweet. I know the pain of feeling invisible, not feeling seen, not feeling heard. And I also know that change is possible. And that really starts from within. It starts from a place of deep self-care and self-love and a willingness to heal and transform. And so I really enjoy helping other people along that path. So that's me in a nutshell.
Beautiful. And there isn't a nutshell big enough to contain you. So thank you for being who you are. And yes, you talk about energy. I think energy is really what we all do here. And so I'm excited to talk more about that. But before we get there, Sarah, I'd like to have you introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you? And what do you do and why?
Firstly, congratulations to Scott and his lady. I'm so pleased for you. I really am. I'm Sarah Jane. I'm based in a little place called Bournemouth on the south coast of the UK. I also work with energy, with Reiki, with sound. And I have discovered through my work with sound that I can support people to connect with their younger self, get to a cellular memory level and support them to heal the hurt, the pain, and the trauma of their early years. But do you know what? Younger self could be you of yesterday, you of this morning, bearing in mind it's nighttime here. It's younger self could be at any age. Trauma can happen, hurt, pain can happen at any time of our lives. So I'm about working with people. Why do I do it? Because it was my journey. It was my healing journey, healing the hurt, the pain, and the trauma from my childhood. And it was a very young childhood for myself. And having been able to do that for myself, the passion of supporting others, because I have grown so much with the work that I've been able to do for myself. And I have watched people also grow from that work as well. I do other things. I channel a lot, and Gift of Healing TV as well. So I don't think any of us are a sort of a one thing. We tend to have a very mixed bag of things that we bring.
Right. Well, thank you, Sarah. And you mentioned your why has to do with it being part of your own journey. And I think that's probably common for all of us, you know. It reminds me of just an experience I had when I was very young, actually. I think it was my first, shall we say, enlightened experience. And it happened when I was, I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I remember, you know, being at school in kindergarten and looking up to all those first graders and how amazing they were and how advanced they were and how wonderful they were and stuff. And going through my process and saying, God, I wish I could be a first grader. And then, of course, when time passes, I eventually became a first grader. And one day I was looking forward and I was seeing the second graders, and the same kind of thoughts were going through my mind. God, I wish I could be as amazing and advanced as they are. But then I looked back the other way and I saw the kindergartners that were behind me, and I thought, I wonder, maybe I can help out those kids somehow. And I began to realize at that moment that it doesn't matter where you are on your journey. It doesn't matter how advanced you may be or how early you are in the process. It doesn't matter, because there are always going to be some people ahead of you who can help you out if you just ask. And you, for whatever you have learned, you can turn around and you can share with the people behind you. So, and that's what we do here. That's what soul empowerment is all about. It's about bringing our own experiences so that you can maybe learn from them a little bit and maybe resonate with something similar that happened in your life and start to empower your own soul by getting your own ego mind out of the way and so on. But so I think this is a beautiful start to our conversation. Lots of great stuff here to get us moving in the right direction. And one of the things that I wanted to say about this is, I don't know about you three, but I've had this, I think, an unfortunate habit of always striving to get further and further and further and further and further ahead. And always looking forward. What can I do now? What can I do now? What can I do now? And every time when I think about that, to me, it's like that image of climbing a mountain, right? When you're climbing a mountain and you're just trudging up the hill with your head down and you're just kind of focusing on what you're doing, every once in a while you might look up and you say, oh my God, there's so much mountain left to climb. And that's all you can think of, is how much more work there is, right? Well, I learned a while back that sometimes you got to stop. And then you got to turn around and look down that hill and just see how far you've come. And then you can say, wow, that's quite a lot of mountain there too. I have done a lot of work to get where I am today. And that's really what we're talking about today. We want to do our own empowerment review so that we can help you to start thinking about how you can review your own self-empowerment, your soul empowerment. That's what this is all about. So who would like to begin? Who would like to share first? Scott, go ahead.
You brought up a couple of things. Thinking about going up the mountain, the stopping and smelling the roses, and being able to find gratitude in where you are, what you have, how you are right now, And in doing that, sometimes when you look back, those times when you were perplexed, you were anxious, you felt were traumas, they have helped you get to where you are now, and being grateful for those experiences. The other point you made about no matter where you are in life, helping somebody out. When I was learning to play tennis, I always wanted to play somebody that I knew was better than me because it made me better. I saw how they reacted to the shots, where their shot placement was, how they served, what they did in order to be better at tennis. And I wanted to be able to compete, but I always wanted them to be a little bit better than I was so that I could learn. I have a longer story about the review of where I was this time last year as compared to where I am now. Now, obviously, we've already talked about my getting married, but what led up to that? I had been married for 40 years when my wife passed. And I said, all right, that's it. No more marriage. That's it. That marriage was as I was brought up to see what marriage was, how I should be, who I should be, what I should do, the role I should play. And it really formed and stayed that way for those 40 years. We kind of took those roles on, and it was my idea of marriage. I found that marriage was this, and I was always told by my parents, marriage is this. You become one, and so you have to maneuver life like this, and you compromise, and you constantly your identity is one. And now I see marriage as, because of our training, because of all the courses, all the people I've spoken to. I've worked with Gail, I've worked with Sarah, I've worked with David. I've talked to them. We've talked for hours. And the changes within me is that marriage should be of equal giving, not on a daily basis. Some days it's 80-20, sometimes it's 40-60, sometimes it depends. Somebody's sick, you're taking care of them. If you're sick, they're taking care of you. There's that understanding, that safety is that the relationship is what's in the middle between the two of you and what you give of that relationship. Being able to maintain your identity, being able to maintain your interests, and loving that person enough to have them do the same. And the relationship in the middle is what it's all about. That relationship, the relationship is only as good as what you put into it. What did I find when I went to Peru? By the way, this is kind of the crux of all of it. When I went to Peru, we went to the Andes, and we learned Inca traditions. We went to sacred sites, and it was a purging of everything I was holding, everything I held on to. There was a moment when we were at the Condor Rock, and they said, well, you leave all your troubles here. What do you mean? Well, they said, they all came into to worship here, and you leave all your troubles. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we did a small ritual, and they said, put your hands on the rock. I put my hands on the rock, and I started crying, sobbing. I don't know where it came from. It came from somewhere so deep within me. And it was like a minute and a half, and I couldn't even catch my breath. And I just came pouring out of me. And I finally caught my breath, started to breathe. I turned around, and two of the party that I went with were just there to give me a hug. And I just held on. And I realized that it wasn't just what I was carrying. I felt like I was carrying, getting rid of and grounding so much of that past lives, ancestral, all of that coming out of me all at once. And it was such a change. It was such a big thing for me. It changed how I viewed my life now by getting rid of all of that. And it was really impactful. Why I got married? My girlfriend's birthday was December 10th, and we got married on December 10th. That was her 60th birthday, her first wedding on her birthday. And in front of a JP, small setting, but it was the meaning of it. And that's the change in me. And I think that for everyone, that path of through your life, when you go to review it, there are landmarks that, through the course of the year, but it's who you are today. Thank you.
Beautiful, sir. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you for that share. Gail, would you like to go next?
That's tough to follow.
Sorry.
No apology needed. So I really related, David, especially to this idea of constantly moving forward, looking forward. And I think that's generally a good thing. And at the same time, I often refer to myself as a recovering overachiever. And so know very well that cycle of here's the goal, get the goal, what's the next goal, here's the goal, get
Right.
that whole hamster wheel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And not knowing any other way to be until fairly recently. And I remember when I got into a coaching program where when we came together as a group to meet, there was always this invitation to share your celebrations. And I laugh at it now because at the time I was like, this is so stupid.
Right.
I was like,
Mhm.
why are we doing this? It was a completely foreign concept to me. And what I didn't know then that I now understand is not only was it the overachiever in me, it was that I was running from my past. The past was the past. I didn't want to look at it, didn't want to deal with it, didn't want to think about it, didn't want to go there. And that worked for many years until it stopped working. So this invitation to sort of stop and orient yourself and be brave enough to look at the accomplishments and maybe the challenges or the things that you kind of don't want to
Mhm.
have in your presence at the current moment is actually such a worthy and valuable exercise, because the other thing that I started to notice when I opened up enough to get in that place of, number one, like really acknowledging, like, hey, I got this project or this award or this, I'm working with this client or whatever, like, and not hiding from that, but not being obnoxious and bragging about it either, but just sort of like, it helps you see yourself in a way that maybe you've never seen yourself before, while at the same time, like you said, like showing you your growth trajectory and how you've
Mhm.
changed and how you've developed, and it almost helps you make peace with those pieces that maybe up until that point you didn't really like. And I think that
Mhm.
that's what's so valuable about doing some sort of year-end review. It doesn't have to be at the end of the year, but to really go through that ritual, that process of taking stock of, yes, who you are today, where you've come from. I remember being in the shower a couple years ago, um, and just talk about inner child, Sarah, you're going to love this. Having this moment where I recognized I was really deep into my healing work at this time and coming to terms with some really difficult things about my childhood and recognizing that child brought me here. And also
Right.
that child still felt like they had to keep doing those things. And it was like this beautiful moment of greeting that child and saying, no, you did it. We're here thank you. You know, you don't have to carry this anymore. I've got you. Like, it was a very profound experience, and much like Scott with the rock and, you know, the tears flowing, like I'm in the shower just bawling, you know, but those moments really are so profound and they can happen, you know, we don't have to spend hours doing that. They can happen in a moment of just stopping, being present, and having the intention of, you know what, I'm just going to take a moment to review where I've been, you know, where I am right now, and like celebrate all of it, even the messy stuff.
You know, I resonate with what you're saying about this idea of let's celebrate our accomplishments. You know, I'm not really that kind of person. I don't want to celebrate per se, but I think what you're talking about, what I was talking about with the idea of pausing partway up the mountain and looking down, it's just a moment to reflect. Wow, look what I've done. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. You don't have to turn it into a rah and pat yourself on the back if that's uncomfortable. On the other hand, if you like doing that, go right ahead and do it. You know, I think that each of us has to acknowledge our own accomplishments in our own way. And whether we do it publicly or whether we do it privately, that doesn't matter. I do think that there is some power in me sitting with you, for example, Gail, and just saying, wow, I realize that I've accomplished this. And I just feel so good about it. And just having you witness that. It doesn't have to be a whole community of people seeing me do this. If only one person sees it, that helps me to feel it even more. So, you know, thank you for your share. And you too, Scott. I love the idea that people are willing to allow their own pain to come out in whatever way it does, because that's where healing comes from. So thank you for that. Sarah Jane, I want to hear from you today.
I'm going to come at this slightly differently.
No, not really.
Just because I can. You sort of talk about sort of, you know, sort of our journey, and we're sort of, there are people are ahead of us and people are behind us, except for the fact we're not. We're all on the right aspect of our journey. But one of the things that I've found working with people, especially with the vocal Reiki and especially with the inner child, is every session is totally different. And so many of those sessions have taught me, because that individual is unique. It's not, you know, with a Reiki session, you can open the channel. Many of us have been taught to open it at the head, at the third eye, and sort of to move around the body, or we can just stay put depending on the level we're at. And it's just about offering that energy and allowing that individual to take that energy where they require it without getting involved. That's if you're doing a simple Reiki session. And it is simple. It's about that individual. It's not about, I remember somebody saying to me, oh, Sarah, if you don't feel anything, how do you know where to direct the energy? And it was just like, oh, no, it's not about me being in control. It's about what's right for you. It's not up to me to direct it. But with working with the vocal Reiki and because there's aspect of talking to people and listening to people and getting their response. Their response is the important thing. And learning over the last couple of years that actually sometimes I need to go way back further. With one particular person, I had to go back to preconception to be able to start the ball rolling from them. So I'm learning as much from them as they are gaining from me, providing I listen. And I listen to understand. And I listen for their benefit, not for what I think should happen. And we can grow so much from that. You know, and I'm sure I've mentioned this one before, is that I was working with one particular lady, and I think I was round her head for whatever reason. And suddenly I don't hear voices, but suddenly the words in my head, I am the love of my life. I knew those words because of everything that she'd shared with me. And I don't remember, I don't let myself remember, because that's an attachment thing, and it can hold people back from them being able to do their letting go. But I remember thinking, these words aren't just for her. They are for me, and they're for every single person in this world. And so we can grow from the experiences we have with the people that are looking to us to support them on their journey. And these conversations with this and today's conversation that I share through Gift of Healing TV, some of the things that have happened, that have come about from those conversations, they have really pushed me outside my comfort zone, and helped me to actually that next layer of the onion. I don't think we're ever meant to hit the top of that mountain, because I think once we
or
do,
the core of the onion.
oh, exactly. But I think we have multiple onions just so that we can't get through them
Exactly. I
all.
was going to say the same thing. That's right.
And so I think it's
I
not
pulled away the layer, and guess what? There's another onion
underneath it. Absolutely, absolutely. And that bit in the middle is so thick, so, and dense. But I think we're not meant to hit that top of the mountain. We're not meant to completely heal. It's Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. And I don't class myself as a healer per se, because I can't heal anyone. I can support people to empower their own self-healing. It's not about me. I'm just there to offer the energies that support them. If we get to that stage where we've healed ourselves, I don't think we'd be able to bring the empathy and the understanding that we can from being that wounded healer. But every step forward we takes us that step further to be able to help people in a new and different and more empowered way.
Right. Beautiful. And I would also add that in order to know the next step forward, sometimes it helps to look back and say, okay, what have I been doing so far? What have I gotten out of it? And that often will inform what you're going to do next, right? You may have already made up your mind about what you're going to do next, but that review can help you figure out exactly how you're going to do that in the next way. And by the way, when I was talking about people ahead and behind, I agree with you. We're all on the same path, and we're all going to go through our own level of growing. But no matter where I am, in my mind and in my perception, there always seems to be someone who has something else that I believe I need to learn. And at the same time, there's someone in the other direction who is looking for what I have right now and would like to benefit from that. So that's all I want to say about that. It's not about, being ahead or above or stronger or anything of that stuff. It's just about being on a path together towards ultimate enlightenment or whatever that is. And we're all going to find our own way there one way or another, right? Sometimes, though, we can get sidetracked, and having the benefit of someone who's already done it to show us how they did it can be very, very helpful. So, and I want people to understand that no matter what kind of a life you've lived, there is something within you that can be of benefit to someone else, right? Even if you're the most hardened criminal on the planet, you've got something inside you that might benefit someone else. So don't hide it. Give yourself permission to acknowledge and have that part of yourself and be willing to share it, because that is what's going to make a difference in the world. It's my perspective.
Finding your voice. I think, Sarah, and you've shown this so many times with sound, finding your voice about your story, being able to tell your story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I used to be ashamed of telling my story when I was younger, because I didn't think I was good enough, because I had made mistakes, because I wasn't perfect, because I didn't do everything just right, because of all of those aspects. I had to allow myself to be human. I had to allow that I was imperfect, that I could make mistakes, that I was going to make mistakes, that everything that I did was flawed in some manner, depending on who was looking at it. And mostly that was me, by the way, who was the ultimate judge and the worst judge and the worst critic of me. So it is finding the voice, and that is making peace within yourself to be able to tell the story. Yes, I find that I relate to clients when we're working together. I too have been where they are. I have too had those same problems. I have too had to go over that hill that I really didn't want to do. I've done those things, and I find when you can express that and say you can get over this too, it's not insurmountable. There is a way. I just had someone call me up and said, I don't know how. And I asked her, what? She said, I don't know how to get out of my own way. And I think that is a very common thread, because you keep banging your head against the wall and wondering why it hurts. Well, let's stop banging your head against the wall first, and let's find another way to do these things. And you're able to take the next step. And that's what I found, is that just taking that next step, whichever way it goes, sideways, backwards, forwards, up or down, just changing that slightly and looking at things from a slightly different perspective changes things within our lives. It's amazing how small things can trigger those changes.
Right. I think that's beautiful. And I just like to add to your thing about finding your voice. I think the most important aspect of my voice is that I speak the truth to myself. I speak the truth about myself to myself. And you mentioned good, bad, and the ugly. Well, I honestly don't believe there is any such thing as good, bad, and ugly. It all just is. And, I have judgments about it for sure. But I think if I can start speaking my truth, speaking the truth to myself, it makes it easier for me then to start speaking the truth to you. And hopefully you can hear the truth and do whatever needs to be done with that truth. And if we can all learn to do that, instead of trying to pretend things that aren't really true, but we want to present a certain face or a facade to the world, that's what it takes to show up as an authentic being. And it's the authentic being that is going to be accepted and loved, not the fake being that you're trying to create, even though you might get something that passes for love in return for that, but we all have to be truthful, I think, but first and foremost to ourselves. And so one of the practices that I've started, well, I think I might have shared this with you before. You talked about something that makes you say, oh, this is ridiculous and stupid and silly, Gail. Well, I had such a practice, and that was to just stand in front of a full-length mirror, totally naked, and say, I love you to myself. First of all, the first thing I see is all kinds of flaws in that physical body, and it's really hard for me not to start judging them. So it took practice. It took practice for me to be able to get there. Yeah, I still have some flaws in my body. I still have some things that could be better, especially if I were younger. But so what? This body has done a lot for me over the years, and so I expect it to have a few bumps and bruises and marks and scars and maybe a little flab where I don't want it. That's going to happen. but I can still say, I love you to that image, that even though that isn't really me, that's just the physical representation of me that's being reflected to my eyes. But that doing something like that, finding the courage to stand in front of that mirror completely naked and vulnerable and just accept yourself for who you are and say, I love you. And say that for 10 or 15 minutes and notice the difference, especially after you've done it for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. Notice how you feel. So it may feel like a game. It may feel like it's silly. It may feel like you're not really speaking truthfully to yourself at first. But if you do it enough times, you'll start to believe yourself. You'll start to believe, yeah, I actually do love myself. I actually do realize that I've got a lot of value here, and I haven't really been acknowledging it. Again, just my opinion.
I love this discussion. I sat down before our show today to just kind of peruse the different shows that we had over the year, and then also look back on my notes from. I do a little process for myself where I tune into the energy for the upcoming year, and then I have the energy by season or quarters. And so I was looking at that, and which was a fun exercise to do because a lot of the themes that showed up on the show throughout the year and what we're talking about today, truth, authenticity, love, feeling your feelings, all of the feelings, was also reflected in the energies that I was sort of working with throughout the year as well. And so it's funny how, like, when we tune into these things, instead of just flipping the calendar over, right? Or just continuing to plow ahead. And sometimes in life, like, that's, we have to put our head down and just keep going, right? We have those moments, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, like, this idea of taking that time to just feel into where you are, where you've been, where you want to go, and making that a practice really starts to create some magic in your life. David, you spoke about the practice of looking in the mirror and telling yourself that you love yourself, and it does feel weird at first. I'm somebody that suffered through a lot of self-loathing in my younger years, like truly hated myself, you know. So to be able to be here today and say, yeah, no, like, I can look at myself in the mirror and I can see those flaws and I see the lines, and I'm getting older, and I can still, like, I can look in my own eyes and just see the spark of life there and feel
Right.
grateful and truly feel like I love myself, and to practice that as a, not just that exercise, but to practice daily of, you know, recognizing, yeah, I do have these flaws, and I do sometimes make decisions that I'm not necessarily proud of, and I'm human and I make mistakes, and that's okay, and I have tools to repair things when it's this unfolding when you're making that, when you're committed, when you're committed to experiencing life in a way that is empowering, right? That is uplifting, that is beyond yourself, even. I think for me, a big piece of even being willing to say yes to go down the healing journey, I was already kind of going that way because I wanted to feel better. I was doing it initially for me. But as I got married and started a family, I was like, I don't want my children to grow up feeling that way. Now, I have some influence over that, but I don't have total influence over that. But how do you,
Right.
one of the ways that came to me as I was contemplating that is, it's not about controlling them. It's about changing how I am being in the world, and being that, because kids watch, they pay attention, they model their parents. So a lot of this is really about this whole concept of soul empowerment, and kind of doing this review of your life, or doing a review of your year, is really about making choices that bring you to your highest and your best, that
Right.
bring fulfillment to you, that bring empowerment to you, that help you experience this world that is not an easy world to experience, with joy, with love, with laughter. And on the flip side, the sadness, the grief, really being human in this experience, and being open to experiencing it all.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Gail. Sarah.
But just thinking about all of this, and you talked about honesty with yourself, and it's the first person we have to be honest with. And I suppose this is where I sort of said the conversations have absolutely sort of helped me, and some of them have been really uncomfortable, is being able to sort of recognize things within yourself, and going back to the ego mind and the self-preservation. And we find ourselves creating self-fulfilling prophecies in our life, sort of, and especially coming from the trauma as a baby, with the sister, then the accident, and then the sister dying, and sort of other things that occurred when I was very, very young, made me believe that love, even friendship, relationships don't last. And that was deeply ingrained in me from being a year old. My parents had abandoned me. They hadn't, but that's what it felt like. Sister died at 9 weeks old. She'd abandoned me. Only that was circumstances as well as the previous one. These things happen in life. But if you're so young that you cannot understand what is going on, you then come into that ego mind of self-preservation. And when, in later years, when things started to seem to fall apart with my marriages, it was, okay, so this isn't going to last. And so I went into that mode of creating that self-fulfilling prophecy. It's being open to understanding what has happened in our lives. So it is important to be able to look back, just not live there.
All right.
Right.
And that's what they say, sort of, you can review your past, just don't go back and stay there. You don't have to live
Exactly.
there anymore.
Mhm.
It's about today. And your past can support you with your future if you look at it and understand it in the right way. It doesn't have to hold you back anymore if you're willing to go there. And there are an awful lot of people who struggle with the thought of, oh, but if I go back, it's too painful. Do you know what? The real pain is not allowing yourself to do that and constantly living in that. So many relationships and 2 marriages, because I created the self-fulfilling prophecy of relationships don't last.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law from my second marriage sort of saying to my mother, she speaks to the cats better than she speaks to him. Oh, I did, absolutely. And I don't doubt that. I really don't, because I've gone into that destructive mode of the relationship.
Yeah.
And it's
I really
accepting
like.
that
Oh, I'm
about
sorry.
yourself.
Sorry.
No, it is about accepting that of yourself,
Right.
accepting where you have been, and can you come through that? I'm not in a relationship per se, But the friend I share the house with, you know, and we've been here 19 years together, and I've known him for 24. You know, so you know, that is not, it's not destructive. The destruction hasn't come in because I've allowed myself to grow beyond that. And I've understood aspects of my life, those layers of the onion I was talking about earlier. If we allow ourselves, and I love the onion, because what happens when you're peeling an onion and cutting it? Yes, I've had an awful lot of those just recently doing onions, the tears. Allow them, because they are a release. And I think that it's perfect.
So Sarah, you said something that I really want to highlight because I think it's so important. You mentioned about the pain that you are afraid to feel isn't really what you're afraid of. The fact of the matter is, and this is a common theme in shadow work. I ask people often, I said, does avoiding that pain that you experienced as a child prevent you from experiencing this pain over here in your life? And when I ask people that, they often say, no, you're right. I guess I am still experiencing pain over here. Well, maybe if you can heal this thing that happened when you were a child and really bring some love to that, then this pain over here now will start to dissipate and go away. This is a powerful, powerful teaching that most people don't really understand. And it's not easy to articulate either, but it's a real truth. And I've had personal experience of that. So I just want to thank you for bringing that up. I think it's very, very important. And I just want to make sure people kind of understand what we're talking about here. Again, it's not about reliving the pain of the past. It's about perhaps bringing some attention and love to it and just observing it from a neutral place so that you can say, oh, yeah, I see what my little girl or my little boy needed back then was this kind of love, which I now, as the adult, can bring to that child. And maybe I wasn't capable of doing that before. Now I am. I'm an adult. I have adult powers. I have adult capabilities. I know how to parent my own self as a child. Nobody else knows better than I do. And that's just a fact of life. So embrace your inner child, love your inner child, bring that compassion and forgiveness. You know, your younger child did some things that you're probably pissed off about. Well, find a way to forgive that. Find a way to have compassion for that little child, remembering that that little child was only 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years old when these things happened, right? That's what it takes. And it takes awareness. And it takes the review.
Can I share the quote by Alice Little?
Absolutely.
As a traumatized child, you were desperately waiting for that adult that would come and save you. What you didn't understand was that it would be yourself as an adult. We are the only ones who can support our inner child to feel listened to feel heard, to feel loved.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Scott, I noticed you were nodding there. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, a majority of the work that I've done on myself, as well as with clients, is acknowledging those inner children. How many times have you been triggered? Right? We all have triggers, right? You don't know where it comes from. Someone does something and you just react very quickly, and that 10-year-old you comes up and doesn't like it because that's how they learn it. And those aspects of ourselves are there to keep us safe. Those inner children are there because we learned at 5, at 7, at 10, at 14 different ways to protect ourselves, whether it's through anger or through hiding or through shame, however that aspect of you reacted at that time. And as an adult, sometimes we get triggered and that comes up right there. We don't even think about it. It just comes right out of our mouth that we were talking through our 10-year-old selves.
That's right.
And what I found is that when you acknowledge and see those aspects, that 10-year-old, that 7-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 14-year-old that was hurt or was scared or reacts that way, when we give that child what it needs to be able to find the joy, whether you were told, oh, you can't ride that skateboard because you're going to get hurt. You're always going to get hurt if you try anything dangerous. And so you pulled back in, you didn't try anything. Anytime the opportunity came up to try anything that was quote unquote dangerous, you said no. And there's that 10-year-old who wants to get out there on that skateboard. And when we go into it and you say, yes, here's a skateboard, go for it. And you allow that your 10-year-old the freedom to be able to do that because you were told not to. All of a sudden, in your adult life, when things come up that are uncomfortable or dangerous, that 10-year-old isn't the one you're speaking through. It's your adult self. So those aspects of us that are all there, we all have them. My gosh, we all grew up and learned those protections. And when they're satisfied, when the reason they came up is solved, when they get the love, when they get the bunny, when they get the ability to do what they wanted to do, if they wanted to parachute, if they wanted to ride a motorcycle, whatever it is, when they're satisfied and you have that completeness within you, you then can speak through your present self. And that's what I've found for most people.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. How often have I found myself saying something only to realize later, yeah, that was my 8-year-old self just whining and complaining, you know? Yeah, it happened. It used to happen a lot before I really started doing this personal deep work for myself. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very much anymore, although I do notice occasionally my little inner child wants to do something that I think wouldn't be necessarily a good idea for a 70-year-old man to do. You know, but I love that playful energy that does come up from time to time, even though I know that, you know, maybe my body couldn't handle it the way it could when I was 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old.
I like the idea of this review when you're triggered too. I found that's been something really helpful and profound for me. Acknowledging that, you know, because I think it can be easy to fall into the perception or belief of, well, now that I'm aware and I'm living in this conscious way, I don't want to get triggered, right? And so we kind of have to dance with this idea of never being triggered again, which is impossible.
Right.
It's impossible, right? We are human and we're going to get triggered. But what do you do with that? What do you do with that information? How can you actually leverage that experience? And so we're talking about year in review, but I'm so glad that this came up because it's a learning experience. To, you know, maybe you can't pull it out in the moment that you're feeling triggered, but to make time a day later or maybe a week later, like, I wonder what, like, I feel like that was my, like, something else was going on there. That wasn't about that person or it wasn't about that situation. Like, what is that really about for me? I've just found that practice to be so helpful in not only clearing the energy of the moment or the situation or the interaction with the person, but also clearing the root of where it's coming from. You know, when we have that understand, it's information, right? And our relationships, whatever the relationship is, right, might even be with a stranger, an interaction. Like, I've had a lot of interactions with strangers, and I'm that have been triggering for me this year. And I'm like, what's up with this? Like, this person's making all these assumptions about me that are like, where is this coming from? Right. And so that's getting curious about that and sitting back and being like, okay, this is how I felt about it. This is how I'm handling it. This is, I'm recognizing there's a part of me that wants to run and hide because I don't want to be a target like this. Like, this doesn't feel good. It's not real. It's not true. But then also, why am I getting so hung up on what some stranger is saying about me or saying to me, and when I know that they don't even know me? So taking that time, and I feel like this is a little bit of shadow work too, of looking at those unwanted experiences or situations or conversations and how we're showing up in them, and spending some time to think about, to go deeper than the surface layer of, hey, I felt angry about this, or I felt hurt about this, or it was like, yes, and was it really about that thing, or is this an older thing? And
Exactly.
how do you want to deal with this when this comes up again in the future? Because it will. Right? Who do you want to be in that situation?
Yeah. Well, I think what you're saying is exactly what Sarah was saying about, we're never going to get to the top of the mountain. We're never going to get to the core of the onion. Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that. I think on some level we will sooner or later, but maybe not in this lifetime. Maybe this lifetime is just about making it a certain way up the mountain, or a certain depth into the onion. So I think you're absolutely right. We're gonna have more opportunities to look at things that probably need to be looked at in order to complete our healing. It's like, I remember doing a lot of shadow work, and most of my work was focused on my mother. And it took a long time for me to work through a lot of those issues that, I had to deal with. And at one point I was asking myself, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to stop blaming my mother for what happened in my life? And a man who was in my circle said, don't judge yourself for where you are at right now. Do whatever work needs to be done right now, and just let it be your work for today. Don't worry about tomorrow or next week or whether it's going to end or not. Every little piece is going to get you closer to that place that you want to be, which is a place of forgiveness. And the only reason he said that is because I had claimed that's what I want. I want to be able to forgive my mom. And eventually I did get there. But sometimes it might feel like it's so overwhelming, you're never going to reach the end of it. Okay? Just trust me that, as George Harrison said, all things must pass. And all things do pass eventually. So we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and I want to make sure I give Sarah a chance to say something brilliant before we close out today.
A little quote in a little light language. We don't stop playing because we grow old. The other way round. I always get this the wrong way round. Yes, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. I think that's the right way around. And it's just thought, have fun in your life.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. Let your child. It's autumn here in the northern hemisphere. You've got the trees shedding all their leaves. Go and have a good kick around. Or if you can, near a beach, go and paddle. If you're in the southern hemisphere, probably the best thing at the moment. Just do something. Allow yourself. Go and have a candy floss or an ice cream. Just allow yourself to do the kid thing. And you haven't got to jump off a wall or climb a tree. Just allow yourself to do the kid thing. But a little bit of light language for you. Yes, tōna tana ka tēnei ke anche, hel tōrona ka che I te amata ke, se o tana ka shin inte, ont tana ka e I, il toramai tai anchana ka te era mai kaita, nen toramaka chi iniai. Fe huntai I she na act, antorai ka che tiama. Tiorai naika, te hashtanai kinchiana kateima. Toetaka, encheataka te, noi chea mea. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail, final words?
Well, I want to say thank you to each of you, David, Sarah, Scott, and say thank you to anyone who's catching the replay, anyone who's caught any of our episodes throughout the year. I feel like we've had some really fun and deep conversations. Real quickly, something that's come up for me recently, speaking of being triggered and having awareness of the next layer of the onion, I've been invited to collaborate with a lot of different people over the year, and it's been brought to my attention that in those collaborations, in certain ones, there's been an in and out energy, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And actually, I was working with my coach last week around this. And what came to me was that I was afraid of getting hurt. I was afraid of fully committing to these opportunities because I was afraid of getting hurt. And so that's a perfect example of like the next layer of I've done a lot of work around that already. And here we go, peeling the next layer. And so I just feel a sense of deep gratitude to the team here, to you, David, for the invitation to collaborate, because I think we're moving into more than a year now together. And for creating a space where it felt very easy and safe to say yes, and to give me a different experience of what that means to work in collaboration with people. So yeah. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Well, thank you, Gail. Scott, final words.
Gratitude to this all three of you for giving me perspectives that I didn't know I needed. And thank you for the gift of the vulnerability and the openness that you share on a monthly basis in every interaction that we have. And I want to say thank you. And for those watching, this is special. It doesn't happen all the time where you have people that are on the same level who give so much to the program. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, people, for watching this and for being here. This is Soul Empowerment, and we are going to continue because we believe in helping you to empower your soul. And so I want to say thank you for being here. Remember, you can catch recordings of this and every other episode on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And until next time, I wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. So bye-bye for now.